I sacrificed 10 years of my youth to secure his seat at the head of the table, believing tonight was our victory. But as the champagne flowed, the chairman leaned close and whispered that I should see who my husband actually arrived with. I turned toward the VIP balcony and watched my perfect life disintegrate in a single heartbeat. It was the beginning of a nightmare far colder than simple infidelity. My name is Elena Vance, and at 34 years old, I stood in the center of the most opulent ballroom in New York City, feeling entirely invisible. The Sterling Dynamics Gala was a kaleidoscope of diamonds and black ties, a celebration of corporate conquest that smelled of expensive cologne and old money. I adjusted the strap of my gown, a dress I had bought specifically to match the company colors, trying to force a smile onto my face. Despite the champagne bubbles dancing in the crystal flutes and the string quartet playing a lively waltz, a cold knot of anxiety sat heavy in my stomach. I was the wife of the man of the hour, yet I felt like an intruder in my own life. My husband, Derek, was the sun everyone orbited tonight. He looked devastatingly handsome in his bespoke tuxedo, the one I had ironed myself just hours ago because he claimed the dry cleaners never got the crease quite right. He was laughing near the center of the room, tilting his head back in that charismatic way that made investors open their checkbooks and rivals grind their teeth. He was surrounded by a wall of admirers, but every time I tried to catch his eye from the edge of the crowd, his gaze slid over me like I was a piece of furniture. It was a subtle rejection, a coldness that pricked at my skin despite the warmth of the room. He would look left, right, up at the chandeliers, anywhere but at me. I clutched my champagne flute tighter, trying to suppress the rising unease. This was supposed to be our night. My mind drifted back to the grueling years that had led to this moment. I remembered working 16 hours a day at a thankless marketing firm, eating cold takeout over spreadsheets, just so Derek could finish his MBA without $1 of debt. I had charmed his potential clients when he was too tired to speak, ghost-written his emails, and smoothed over his rough edges until he shone like a diamond. I had built the ladder he climbed, rung by rung, believing that his elevation was our shared victory. I told myself his distance tonight was just nerves, that once the promotion was official, he would pull me onto the stage and tell the world we did this together. The crowd parted slightly, and the atmosphere shifted. Julian Sterling had arrived. The chairman was a man carved from granite and steel, his presence commanding silence without a word. I watched him across the room. He was not looking at the stage or the buffet. His sharp, predatory eyes were fixed on Derek, but there was no pride in his expression. It was the look a hawk gives a field mouse before the dive. Scrutiny, calculation. It sent a shiver down my spine. To my surprise, Julian did not head toward the podium. He walked straight toward me. I straightened my spine, ready to accept the congratulations on behalf of my husband. Julian stopped inches from me, smelling of cigars and rain. He did not smile. He leaned in, his voice a low rumble that cut through the chatter. "You should see who he actually came with," he whispered. Before I could process the confusion, he raised a hand and pointed discreetly toward the shadowed alcove of the VIP balcony above us. I followed his finger, my heart hammered against my ribs as my eyes adjusted to the dim light. Derek was there. He was not alone. He was standing close to a woman I recognized instantly, Chloe. The new chief financial officer, a woman 10 years my junior with ambition that rivaled her beauty. But they were not discussing quarterly projections. Derek's fingers were interlaced with hers, his thumb stroking the back of her hand with a tenderness he had not shown me in years. The air left my lungs. I watched, paralyzed, as Derek leaned down and kissed Chloe on the forehead. It was not a quick peck. It was lingering and possessive. I could hear the faint drift of his voice as he turned to two major shareholders standing nearby. "I would like you to meet the real architect of my success," he said, gesturing to her. "My partner and soulmate, Chloe." The words hit me like physical blows. He was erasing a decade of my sacrifice in a single sentence, replacing my sweat and tears with her perfectly manicured hands. Rage, hot and blinding, flooded my veins. I dropped my glass, not caring that it shattered against the marble floor. I took a step forward, ready to storm that balcony and scream the truth until every reporter in the room turned their cameras on his betrayal. But a hand clamped down on my arm like a vice. It was Julian. He pulled me back, his grip bruising. "Do not make a scene." "Elena," he hissed into my ear, "you think this is just about a mistress? You are in danger far greater than a broken heart. If you go up there now, you lose everything." Julian did not give me time to process the image of my husband with another woman. He maneuvered me through a side door and down a long service corridor, his grip never loosening until we were inside a windowless conference room. The heavy door clicked shut, sealing out the music and the laughter, replacing the party atmosphere with the hum of electronics and the stifling silence of a crisis in progress. 3 men in dark suits stood by a bank of monitors, not acknowledging my entrance. They were private security, the kind that cost more than my annual salary. "Sit down, Elena," Julian commanded, pointing to a leather chair facing the screens. "I do not understand," I stammered, my voice trembling as I sank into the seat. "Derek is having an affair. Why are there security guards? Why are you involved in my marriage?" Julian leaned against the table, crossing his arms over his chest. "If only it were just an affair. Derek is not just cheating on you. Elena, he has been systematically embezzling funds from Sterling Dynamics. We are talking about millions of dollars siphoned off through shell companies." I shook my head. The denial automatic and desperate. "No, Derek is ambitious, maybe even ruthless in business, but he is not a thief. He values his reputation too much to risk it for money." "He values the money more," Julian corrected coldly. He tossed a thick file onto the table in front of me. "And he is smart. He did not put his name on a single illegal transaction. He used yours." I froze. My hands hovered over the folder before I forced myself to flip it open. Inside were bank transfer authorizations, loan applications, and offshore account setups. All of them bore my signature. It was my handwriting. Or at least, a perfect forgery of it that I could barely distinguish from my own. "For the past 2 years," Julian continued, his voice devoid of pity, "Derek has been building a paper trail. Every stolen cent has flowed through accounts opened in your name using your social security number. And that woman, Chloe. She is not just a pretty face. She is a forensic accountant we suspect of professional money laundering. Derek brought her in to clean the money, and together they have set you up as the fall guy." "The fall guy," I whispered, the room spinning. "The audit is scheduled for tomorrow morning," Julian said. "When the discrepancies are found, all fingers will point to you. Under federal law, given the amount, you are looking at 20 years in federal prison. Derek will play the heartbroken husband who had no idea his wife was a criminal mastermind. He keeps the money, and you keep the cell." "You are lying," I choked out, clutching the edge of the table. "He loves me. He wouldn't do this." Julian gestured to one of the technicians without looking away from me. "Call him." I pulled my phone from my clutch with shaking fingers. I dialed Derek. On the large monitor on the wall, a live feed from the ballroom appeared. I saw Derek check his pocket and look at the screen. "Hey, babe." Derek's voice came through the phone, smooth and warm. "Where did you go? I am stuck in a boring corner with the investors from Tokyo. I miss you." I watched the screen. Derek was nowhere near the Japanese investors. He was leaning against the balcony railing, laughing as Chloe whispered something in his ear. He took a sip of her drink, looking completely relaxed. "I just went to the restroom," I said, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "I will be right back." "Hurry back," he said. "Love you." He hung up. On the screen, he kissed Chloe on the neck, a gesture of intimacy that shattered whatever hope I had left. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the carpet. The world tilted on its axis. It was not just an affair, it was an execution. Suddenly, the past 2 years made sense. The long business trips where he was unreachable, the way he insisted on handling all our finances because I was too stressed with work, the documents he would ask me to sign blankly when I was half asleep or rushing out the door. He had not been taking care of me. He had been fattening the sacrificial lamb. I felt bile rise in my throat. My husband was not just leaving me. He was planning to bury me alive. Julian pulled a chair out and sat directly in front of me. I could call the FBI right now. They would arrest you within the hour. But I hate being played, and I hate thieves in my company. I am willing to make you a deal. I looked up at him, tears blurring my vision but my mind starting to clear. I will hold off on the police, Julian said, his eyes locking onto mine. But only if you stop crying and start listening. We are going to turn this trap around. You are going to help me destroy them. Are you in? I splashed freezing water on my face in the opulent marble bathroom, scrubbing away the ruin of my mascara until my skin was raw. I stared at my reflection. The woman looking back was terrified, but she had to die right here in this room. If I wanted to survive the night, I had to become someone else. I had to be the oblivious, adoring wife Derek believed he could destroy. I applied a fresh layer of lipstick, forced the corners of my mouth upward, and walked back into the wolf's den. The ballroom was still spinning with music and laughter, a grotesque contrast to the cold dread settling in my bones. I found a spot near the bar and waited. It did not take long. Derek materialized from the crowd, his eyes scanning my face with the precision of a bomb disposal technician. He was looking for cracks. He was looking for fear. "There you are," he said, sliding an arm around my waist. His touch, once my source of comfort, now felt like a brand. I suppressed the urge to vomit and leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder. I just needed some air. I lied, keeping my voice light and airy. The champagne went straight to my head. He squeezed my waist, a little too hard. "You had me worried. You know how you get when you are overwhelmed." We left shortly after. The limousine ride home was a masterclass in psychological warfare. The partition was up, isolating us in the leather-scented darkness. Derek did not hold my hand. Instead, he looked at me with a performative pity that made my skin crawl. "You look exhausted, Elena," he said softly, tracing a line under my eye. "I have been noticing it for weeks. You are forgetting things. You are moody. And tonight, honestly, you looked frail. It breaks my heart to see you aging like this from stress." I stared out the window, watching the city blur by. He was planting the seeds of insanity, watering them with fake concern. "I have made arrangements," he continued, his voice silky. "There is a wellness center in Vermont, very private, very secure. No phones, no internet, just peace. I think you should go there tomorrow, just for a month or two. To reset." My blood ran cold. It was not a retreat. It was a holding cell. If I went to a place with no communication, I would be cut off from the world when the audit hit tomorrow morning. The police would find an empty house and a fleeing wife, solidifying my guilt. He was not trying to help me rest. He was trying to bury me. When we walked into our penthouse, the trap snapped shut. My Louis Vuitton suitcase was already standing by the door, fully packed. He had been so confident in his manipulation that he had not even waited for me to agree. "I packed for you," he said, guiding me toward the dining table where a neat stack of documents waited next to a Mont Blanc pen. "The car will be here at 6 in the morning. I just need you to sign these papers before you go. It is just standard power of attorney stuff. Since you will be offline, I need to be able to manage the household accounts and your investments while you are getting better." I looked at the papers. Even without reading the fine print, I recognized the layout. These were not just management authorizations. They were transfer deeds and liability acceptances. If I signed these, I was essentially confessing to financial mismanagement and handing him the legal right to liquidate everything I owned. My hand hovered over the pen. He was watching me, his body tense, his eyes hard. If I refused, the mask would drop. He might get violent. I needed time. I picked up the pen, then let it clatter to the table. I gripped my temples, letting out a sharp gasp. My head. I moaned, squeezing my eyes shut and swaying on my feet. Derek, it hurts. It is like a migraine. I cannot see straight. The letters are swimming. Impatience flashed across his face, quickly covered by that sickening mask of concern. Just sign it quickly, babe, and then you can sleep. I cannot, I cried out, adding a touch of hysteria to my voice. I think I am going to be sick. Please, I just need to lie down. I will sign them in the morning before the car comes. Please. He stared at me for a long, agonizing second, weighing his options. Finally, he sighed, the sound of a man burdened by a troublesome child. Fine, go to bed. But we are doing this first thing in the morning. I fled to the bedroom, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I changed into my silk pajamas, my hands shaking so badly I could barely manage the buttons. When Derek came to bed, he did not touch me. He turned his back, falling asleep within minutes, his breathing steady and untroubled. I lay awake in the dark, listening to the rhythm of his breath. This man, whom I had loved for a decade, whom I had built my entire world around, was sleeping soundly after planning my destruction. He looked peaceful. He looked human. But I knew better now. I was lying next to a monster, very slowly, moving only under the cover of the ambient city noise. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. I turned the brightness down to the lowest setting and typed a message to the number Julian had given me. My fingers flew across the glass, fueled by a cold, sharp hatred that had replaced my fear. I am ready to fight. The house was silent after the heavy oak door clicked shut behind my husband. It was barely 6 a.m, and Derek had left early, claiming an emergency breakfast meeting with the board. I knew exactly whose bed he was rushing to, but I did not have the luxury of jealousy. I had a job to do. I pressed the small earpiece deeper into my ear canal as Marcus, the private investigator Julian had assigned to me, gave the signal. I was standing in front of the mahogany double doors of Derek's study, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I slipped inside. The room smelled of leather and the expensive scotch Derek drank when he was plotting. My target was the wall safe concealed behind the large abstract painting I had bought him for our 5th anniversary. I lifted the heavy frame and stared at the digital keypad. Marcus had provided the code, a detail that twisted the knife in my gut even further. I punched in the numbers 1, 0, 0, and 3. October 3rd, Chloe's birthday. The lock disengaged with a cheerful beep that sounded like a mockery of my marriage. Inside lay the black laptop Julian had described, sitting atop a stack of documents. I pulled the computer out and booted it up, inserting the high-speed flash drive Marcus had given me. While the progress bar on the screen crawled agonizingly slowly, I flipped through the papers. Nausea rose in my throat. There were loan applications for $500,000, offshore transfer requests to the Cayman Islands, and second mortgage deeds on my parents' home. All of them bore my signature, forged with terrifying accuracy. He was not just stealing from the company. He was dismantling my entire existence, piece by piece. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I glanced at the screen and felt the blood drain from my face. The security app showed Derek in the elevator. He had forgotten something. He was coming back. You have 90 seconds. Elena. Marcus's voice crackled in my ear, sharp and urgent. Get out of there. I wanted to scream. The download bar was at 90%. I watched the numbers tick up, my breath hitching in my throat. 95. 98. Done. I yanked the drive out, shoved the laptop back into the safe, and swung the heavy painting back into place just as the front door downstairs unlocked. There was no time to leave the room. I scrambled into the walk-in closet that connected the study to the guest room, pulling the door shut until only a sliver of light remained. Heavy footsteps thudded on the hardwood floor. Derek stormed into the study, muttering curses under his breath. Through the crack, I saw him rifling through his desk, searching for a blue folder. He found it, but instead of leaving immediately, he pulled out his phone. I held my breath, pressing my hand over my mouth to stifle the sound of my own terror. I tapped the record button on my phone screen. "I have the file," Derek said, his voice dripping with annoyance. "No, she is still asleep. The sedative I put in her tea last night worked like a charm. Do not worry about her, Chloe." "That stupid cash cow has no idea she is about to be slaughtered. We just need her to sign the final transfer today, and then she is history." Tears pricked my eyes, but they were hot with rage, not sorrow. He called me a cash cow. He admitted to drugging me. I saved the recording, clutching the phone like a weapon. "I love you too," he said, his tone shifting to that sickening sweetness. "I will see you in 20 minutes. He strode out of the room. I waited until I heard the front door slam and the lock engage before I collapsed against the closet wall, my legs turning to jelly. I looked down at the flash drive in my hand. It was small, cold, and metallic, but it held the weight of my freedom. I had the ledger. I had the recording, and for the first time since this nightmare began, the hunter had become the hunted. The safe house was cold, but the chill coming from the laptop screen was worse. Julian and Marcus sat on either side of me, their faces grim as the data from the flash drive unspooled a narrative of pure evil. I had expected theft. I had expected betrayal. I was not prepared for the systematic dismantling of my sanity. Marcus opened a folder labeled Medical History. My breath hitched. Inside were scanned documents from a psychiatrist I had never met, detailing sessions that had never happened. The diagnosis was stark and damning: paranoid schizophrenia with episodes of early-onset dementia. They had created a paper trail to prove I was mentally unstable, a liability to myself and others. Then came the email chain between Derek and a doctor whose license had been revoked 3 years ago. My eyes scanned the text, and I felt the room tilt. They were discussing dosages. The subject line was simply, "the vitamins." I felt a phantom sensation in my throat, the memory of Derek handing me 2 blue pills every single morning with a kiss and a glass of water, telling me they were for my skin and energy. The email read that the current dosage should induce mild hallucinations, vertigo, and significant short-term memory loss. It instructed that if she complained of headaches, he should increase the sedative at night. I covered my mouth to stifle a sob. The fog that had clouded my brain for months. The times I lost my keys. The dizziness that made me stumble at parties. None of it was stress. It was poison. The man I shared a bed with had been chemically lobotomizing me over toast and coffee, but the horror had not reached its bottom yet. Marcus clicked on a final PDF. It was a life insurance policy, taken out 6 months ago, with a payout of $5 million in the event of accidental death. Below it was a schematic for a car braking system and a scheduled maintenance appointment for my sedan at a garage owned by one of Chloe's cousins. The plan was clear. Once I signed the confession and took the fall for the embezzlement, a tragic car accident due to brake failure would silence me forever. Derek would play the grieving widower, twice victimized by a crazy criminal wife who died before she could serve her time. I pushed the chair back and scrambled away from the table, hyperventilating. "I cannot do this," I gasped, shaking my head violently. "He is going to kill me. He is actually going to kill me. I need to leave. I need to run." Julian stood up and blocked my path. He did not offer a hug. He offered reality. "Run where?" "Elena. The police are looking for a mentally unstable embezzler. If you run, you prove them right. If you run, you are dead." He gripped my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. "You are the only one who can stop this. Do not let him win. Do not let him take your life and your name." Something inside me snapped. It was the sound of the scared, loving wife dying, making room for something much harder. I looked at the screen, at the face of the man who had promised to protect me. The fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystallized hatred. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. "I am not going to run," I said, my voice steady and low. "And I am not just going to send him to prison. I am going to destroy him. I want the world to watch him burn." Julian nodded, a dark satisfaction in his eyes. "The merger signing is this Saturday. It will be the biggest audience of his life. Let us give them a show they will never forget." I returned to the penthouse and played the role of the defeated woman to perfection. I told Derek that he was right and that I needed help. I agreed to check into the wellness center immediately after the merger ceremony on Saturday. The relief on his face was immediate and insulting. He truly believed he had won. That evening, while pretending to nap, I heard him on the phone with Chloe in the next room. Their voices were light and careless. They were discussing a €3 million villa near Lake Como, laughing about how the closing date would align perfectly with my scheduled institutionalization. They had stopped looking over their shoulders because they thought the threat had been neutralized. The next morning, I asked Derek for one small favor. I wanted to visit the office to say goodbye to my team before I disappeared for treatment. He was hesitant, but I played the guilt card, looking at him with watery, pleading eyes until he agreed. He did not know that in my purse, tucked inside a lipstick tube, was a high-powered listening device Marcus had procured. Walking into Sterling Dynamics felt like walking into a lion's den, but this time I was the one with the weapon. I went straight to Chloe's office. She welcomed me with a smile that was all teeth and triumph. "I just wanted to ask you to take care of him," I said, my voice trembling as I sat down. I dropped my purse on the floor, spilling its contents. As I bent down to gather my things, I deftly stuck the transmitter to the underside of her leather guest chair. Chloe looked at me with mock sympathy. "Do not worry, Elena. I will handle everything. Derek needs a partner who understands the complexities of the business." I looked up, feigning confusion. "It all seems so complicated. All those accounts." She laughed, a harsh, arrogant sound. "It is not for everyone. The layering of the offshore trusts is a bit distinct, but it ensures total privacy." She had just confirmed the money laundering structure, thinking I was too medicated to understand what she meant. The bug was live, and Marcus was recording every word from the van in the parking garage. Back at home, the final test awaited. Derek placed a stack of documents on the kitchen island. These were the final transfers, the ones that would move the stolen funds into the account that bore my name, sealing my fate. "Just sign here, babe," he said, tapping the paper. I picked up the pen. I had the decoy page Marcus had forged tucked inside my sleeve. It was a perfect visual match, but the text on it was harmless legal gibberish. I pretended to drop the pen. As Derek looked down, I performed the switch. It was a move I had practiced 100 times in the mirror. I slid the real incriminating page into my sleeve and placed the decoy on the table. I signed it. Derek picked up the paper and frowned. He rubbed the paper between his thumb and forefinger. "The ink looks strange," he said, his eyes narrowing. "It looks faded." My heart stopped. For a second, I thought he knew. I thought he would grab my arm and find the stolen page. "Oh," I said, forcing a casual shrug. "The printer in the den has been flashing the low toner warning for a week. I forgot to change the cartridge." He stared at the page for another second, then shrugged and filed it away. "Stupid machine," he muttered. That night, Derek cooked dinner. He opened a bottle of vintage red wine, the kind we used to save for anniversaries. He poured me a large glass, his eyes watching me closely. I knew he wanted me drunk and pliable for tomorrow. I took small sips, but every time he turned to check the oven or check his phone, I poured the wine into the potted fern behind me. By the end of the meal, I acted slurry and disoriented. He carried me to bed, whispering sweet lies about how happy we would be once I was better. I lay there in the dark, stone-cold sober, watching the man I had married sleep the deep sleep of the guilty, knowing that when the sun rose, I would burn his entire world to the ground. Saturday morning arrived with a sky the color of bruised iron, matching the cold determination that had settled in my chest. This was the day of the merger, the day Derek Vance would be crowned the king of the corporate world at the Grand Hotel, the city's most prestigious venue. But while Derek was preparing for a coronation, Julian Sterling had prepared an execution. The ballroom had been transformed into a high-tech arena. A massive LED screen spanned the entire back wall of the stage, intended to display quarterly growth charts and stock projections. The sound system was concert quality, powerful enough to ensure that every whisper could be heard in the back row. And scattered among the 500 guests were not just wealthy investors and board members, but plainclothes officers from the Economic Crimes Division, sipping water and waiting for the signal. Derek had laid out my outfit for the evening on the bed. It was a shapeless, charcoal gray dress, high-necked and mournful, designed to make me look washed out, fragile, and disappearing. He wanted the world to see a wife who was fading away, a tragic accessory to his vibrant success. I looked at the dress, then picked it up and dropped it into the trash can. I walked into my closet and pulled out a gown I had bought 3 years ago but never worn. It was crimson red, structured, and bold, a dress that demanded attention. When I walked out into the living room, fully made up with sharp eyeliner and my hair in fierce waves, Derek stopped dead in his tracks. He looked me up and down, his jaw tightening. "I thought we agreed on the gray," he said, his voice tight with suppressed anger. I smoothed the silk over my hips. I spilled coffee on it. I lied smoothly. "I wanted to look vibrant for your big night. Darling, don't you like it?" He could not argue. We were already running late. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my flesh, and marched me to the waiting limousine. The ride to the hotel was suffocating. Derek raised the privacy screen and turned to me, his face twisting into a mask of cruelty. "Listen to me, Elena," he hissed, leaning in so close I could smell the mint on his breath. "You are going to smile tonight. You are going to stand where I tell you to stand, and you are going to keep your mouth shut. If you say one word that sounds off, if you shed one tear, I will make sure your condition deteriorates very quickly. By Monday, you will be in a padded room so deep underground you will forget what the sun looks like. Do you understand?" I looked at him, widened my eyes in feigned terror, and nodded. "I understand. Derek, I will be good." When we arrived at the Grand Hotel, the flashbulbs were blinding. We walked into the ballroom, and almost immediately, Chloe appeared. She was wearing a gold dress that clashed horribly with my red one, a deliberate visual statement of conflict. She did not just greet us, she claimed him. She stepped right into his personal space, brushing imaginary lint off his lapel, positioning herself as the true hostess of the event. I was pushed to the periphery, the silent, unstable wife hovering in the background while the mistress basked in the spotlight. I touched the pearl earring in my left ear, activating the tiny receiver hidden inside. "We are live." "Elena," Marcus's voice came through, crystal clear. "I have bypassed the presentation remote. The evidence package is loaded on the main server. The moment you give the cue, we override the system." I took a deep breath. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I made my way through the crowd, moving toward the side of the stage where the technical crew had set up. I spotted a spare handheld microphone sitting on a props table, left there for the Q&A session. I picked it up, gripping it so hard my knuckles turned white. On stage, the lights dimmed, and a spotlight hit Derek. He looked magnificent, the very picture of the modern American executive. He stepped up to the podium, flashing that charming, boyish smile that had fooled me for a decade. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice booming with false sincerity. "Tonight is not just about profits. It is about values. It is about the integrity we bring to our work and the trust we build with our families and our partners. I watched him from the shadows of the wings. I looked across the room and locked eyes with Julian Sterling, who was standing near the sound booth. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. It is time. Derek smiled his most charming smile and extended a hand toward the opposite side of the stage. He cleared his throat, commanding the attention of every billionaire and power broker in the room. And now, he announced, his voice smooth as silk, I would like to invite up the woman whose financial brilliance and tireless dedication made this merger possible. Please welcome our new Chief Financial Officer, Chloe. That was my cue. Before Chloe could take a single step from the wings, I walked out from the shadows. The click of my heels on the hardwood stage echoed through the sudden, confused silence. I did not walk like the medicated, frail invalid he had tried to create. I walked like a storm in a red dress. I moved directly to the center of the stage, ignoring the gasps rippling through the crowd. Derek's smile faltered, twitching at the corners. Panic flared in his eyes. He lunged for my microphone, his hand clamping over the top of it, trying to wrestle it away. He turned to the crowd, his face twisting into a mask of practiced tragedy. "Please forgive my wife," he shouted over the rising murmur, signaling frantically to the security team in the back. "She is not herself. She is having a severe psychotic episode. She does not know where she is. Security, please remove her immediately for her own safety." I wrenched the microphone from his grip with a strength that surprised us both. I stepped back, creating distance, and looked him dead in the eye. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the glasses. "You are right." "Derek," I said, my voice booming through the concert-grade speakers, steady and cold as a glacier. "I am crazy. I am crazy for believing that you were actually a human being." I raised my left hand and snapped my fingers. Behind us, the massive LED screen flickered. The slide showing the projected revenue for the next fiscal year vanished instantly. In its place, high-definition footage appeared. It was the video from our living room, recorded just 24 hours ago. The audio was crystal clear, booming through the hall. "That stupid cash cow has no idea she is about to be slaughtered," Derek's recorded voice sneered, the malice vibrating through the floorboards. "We just need her to sign the final transfer today. Then the accident happens. Then we are free." A collective gasp ripped through the audience. It sounded like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. I watched the color drain from Derek's face, leaving him gray and corpse-like. He froze, staring at his own image, watching his carefully constructed mask disintegrate in real time. The screen shifted again, faster now, a slideshow of damnation. Bank statements appeared, highlighted in red, showing millions of dollars funneled into accounts in the Cayman Islands. Then came the forgeries, my signature traced over and over again. Then the emails with the crooked doctor, discussing the exact dosage of hallucinogens needed to induce permanent brain damage. "And here," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, pointing at the screen, "is the schematic for the brake failure scheduled for my car next Tuesday. The accident meant to kill me so he could collect $5 million in life insurance." Chloe let out a strangled cry from the side of the stage. She realized the ship was sinking, and she was not going down with it. She turned to run, sprinting toward the fire exit in her heels. But panic made her clumsy. She tripped over a cable and went down hard. Her designer clutch bag flew open, hitting the floor and bursting apart. Dozens of passports spilled across the stage. They slid across the wood like playing cards. They were not American passports. They were fresh fakes, ready for their escape to Europe. The flashing cameras went wild, a strobe light of exposure. The reporters were shouting, pushing forward to capture the wreckage. Derek snapped. The charm evaporated, replaced by raw, animalistic fury. He realized there was no talking his way out of this. He roared, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage, and lunged at me. His hands reached for my throat, his fingers hooked like claws, his face contorted into a snarl. He was going to kill me right there in front of the world. I stood my ground, unflinching, letting the cameras capture the exact moment the celebrated CEO revealed himself to be a violent monster. Derek never reached me. Before his fingers could graze my skin, a blur of motion intercepted him. Julian Sterling, moving with the speed and ferocity of a man half his age, slammed into my husband from the side. The impact was visceral, a heavy thud of bone against bone that echoed through the microphone. Derek hit the floor hard, the wind knocked out of him, and before he could scramble up, 3 members of the private security team were on top of him, pinning his limbs to the hardwood with professional efficiency. Almost simultaneously, the side doors of the ballroom burst open. A dozen plainclothes officers who had been blending in with the crowd drew their badges and weapons. The lead detective marched onto the stage, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. Derek Vance and Chloe Miller, you are under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit murder. Chloe, who was still sprawled on the floor amidst the scatter of fake passports, began to scream. It was a high, thin sound of pure desperation. She scrambled backward, crab-walking away from Derek as if he were radioactive. She pointed a shaking finger at him, tears streaming down her face and ruining her perfect makeup. "He made me do it," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "I was scared for my life. He threatened me. He said he would kill me if I did not help him." The arrogance of the mistress was gone, replaced instantly by the survival instinct of a rat abandoning a sinking ship. She was ready to sell him out to save herself from a single day in prison. Derek did not even look at her. 2 officers hauled him to his feet, wrenching his arms behind his back. The metallic click of the handcuffs securing his wrists was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. He struggled against their grip, his face purple with exertion, his hair wild and disheveled. He locked eyes with me, and I saw the true face of the man I had slept beside for 10 years. There was no remorse. There was no sorrow. There was only pure, unadulterated venom. "You bitch," he roared, spitting the words at me as he strained against the officers. "You ruined everything, you petty, jealous cow. You destroyed my life because you could not handle your own inadequacy. Look at what you did." I stood above him on the edge of the podium, looking down at the wreckage of the man I used to worship. The fear that had defined my existence for the last few months had evaporated. In its place was a quiet, invincible calm. I smoothed the red silk of my dress, feeling taller and stronger than I ever had in my life. "I did not ruin your life, Derek," I said, my voice steady and amplified clearly through the speakers for the entire world to hear. "I just took mine back." The flashbulbs erupted like a strobe light storm. The press pushed against the security barriers, desperate to capture the image of the golden boy of Wall Street being dragged away like a common criminal. Derek continued to scream obscenities as they marched him out, his legacy destroyed in less than 10 minutes. Chloe was led out behind him, sobbing into her hands. Her head hung low. Julian stepped up to the microphone, regaining control of the room. He addressed the stunned shareholders with the gravity of a general who had just won a war. "Tonight, justice was served," he announced. "Sterling Dynamics owes a debt of gratitude to Mrs. Vance. She is the hero who exposed this cancer within our organization. She saved this company, and she will be compensated accordingly." The room erupted into applause, a thunderous ovation that felt distant and surreal. I did not want their pity, and I certainly did not need their validation. I turned my back on the stage, on the lights, and on the ruins of my marriage. I walked down the steps, the red fabric of my gown trailing behind me like royal robes. The crowd parted for me, giving me a wide berth of awe and respect. I walked straight to the exit without looking back once. Outside, the night air was cool and clean, smelling of rain and freedom. Marcus's black sedan was waiting at the curb with the engine running. I opened the door and slid into the back seat, leaving the noise and the spotlight behind me forever. It has been exactly 1 month since the night I stood on that stage and burned my old life to the ground. The media has dubbed the scandal the Vance fraud, and it has dominated the headlines for weeks. Every time I open a newspaper or scroll through my feed, I see new details about the upcoming trial. The romance that Derek and Chloe claimed was written in the stars has disintegrated into a vicious, mud-slinging war. In court, Chloe claims she was a victim of coercion, weeping that Derek forced her to launder the money. Derek, in turn, is painting her as the mastermind who seduced him into crime. Watching them destroy each other gives me a sense of closure that no apology ever could. They deserve each other, and they deserve the prison cells waiting for them. I am reading these updates from the balcony of my new apartment in Tribeca. I sold the penthouse immediately. I could not spend another night within those walls where I was gaslighted and drugged. I sold the furniture, the art, and even the clothes Derek had bought for me. I wanted nothing that carried the scent of his betrayal. My fresh start is financed by a substantial settlement. Julian Sterling kept his word. The money Derek stole from our accounts was returned in full, along with a significant compensation package from the company for the damages I suffered. For the first time in my life, I am wealthy solely on my own terms. I do not need a husband to secure my future. Last week, Julian invited me to lunch and offered me a permanent position as a senior risk consultant at Sterling Dynamics. He told me that I had a rare talent for seeing through deception. It was a tempting offer, one that would have kept me in the world of high power and corporate intrigue. But I politely declined. I spent 10 years building a man who tried to kill me. I am done building things for other people. I told Julian that I am returning to my roots in interior design, a passion I abandoned to support Derek's career. I am going to build something beautiful, and I am going to put my own name on the door. Before I left my apartment today, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the hallway. The woman staring back at me was no longer the tired, anxious wife who flinched at her husband's tone. Her shoulders were back, her eyes were clear, and she looked dangerous in the best possible way. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wedding ring. It was a heavy platinum band, encrusted with diamonds that felt cold against my palm. I took a taxi down to the edge of the Hudson River. The wind was biting, carrying the sharp chill of late autumn. I stood by the railing, watching the gray water churn below. I did not say a prayer. I did not cry. I simply pulled my arm back and threw the ring as hard as I could. I watched it arc through the air, a tiny speck of glittering lies, before it splashed into the dark water and vanished. It was over. The anchor was gone. As I turned to walk away, my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. It was a message from a number I did not recognize. I opened it, and the text was short. "Thank you for being brave." I stared at the screen for a long moment. I do not know who sent it. Perhaps it was a secretary at the company who had been mistreated by Derek, or maybe just someone who saw the news and felt less alone. A small smile touched my lips. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and stepped onto the sidewalk. The trees in New York were turning gold and crimson, and the air tasted like freedom. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cold, clean oxygen of a new beginning, and started walking toward the rest of my life. Thank you so much for listening to my story and walking this path of justice with me. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below, sharing your location and your thoughts on how Derek and Chloe finally got what they deserved. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that like button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it.